Welcome to This is Wealth. On this podcast, we ask, what is wealth? What does wealthy really mean to you? Most of us immediately think of money, but honestly, wealth is so much more than that. If you have health, deep friendships, a supportive family, you have great wealth. Our conversations are going to focus on topics and guests that will enrich your life through their experiences and stories. Our goal is to help you achieve your own wealth in the many facets of your life. This is wealth. It isn't all about money. It's about living life richly. My name is Liz Crawford, and I have been in the investment and wealth management industry for 30 years. I have been blessed to work with a wide variety of clients, from people accumulating assets to one day retire, to mega wealthy families who could do anything, to nonprofits serving our communities. Each client brings their own story. It's my favorite part of working with clients. What I have learned over the years is wealth isn't measured in dollars. I want to share with you true stories that are practical, motivating, and inspiring, and will likely shift your view of what wealth is. These are normal, everyday people you may run into in the coffee shop. When you hear their story, their journey, you can't help but be impacted in some way. Some guests will have very practical takeaways you can use in your life. Other guest stories will sit with you for days and have you reflecting on your life. Get ready to be impacted. Today, as we launch our first episode, I've asked my friend and partner from Sendero Wealth Management, Tara Maxwell, to join me. Tara and I work very closely designing family engagement programs for families of generational wealth. And it might surprise you to know that money is not the most important thing to these families. Let's begin with a question to our audience. How do you define wealth? Hit pause, think about that question, and we'll get back to you in a minute. Welcome back. Now, if you start asking friends and family that question, you might be surprised. Some of the answers will really shock you, and you'll be surprised to know that money is not really the top answer. We often use money and wealth interchangeably, but they're not really the same. I find that when you ask what matters most to you and why, we get to the true answer of what wealth is for you. Tara, let me ask you, how do you define wealth in your life?
You would ask me that. I appreciate that. It's definitely the family, the purpose that I have. I can only say for myself, it's my faith. It's the things that matter most to me. If I had not anything left in my financial category, I would still have those things left. And so that makes me a very wealthy and blessed person.
Isn't it funny that some of the families that we work with say again and again, the money could go away. And sometimes the money is a burden, but the true wealth that they have and that is the most important thing to them is their family. Often for the families we work with, it's their faith. It's making sure that they have that togetherness and that nothing divides them up as a family.
It's true. It's something that they're focused on. And I really feel like that the people that we work with, that's the most important part. And just giving back to their family and investing in their family is really...
Okay, you bring up a great point, investing in your family. Mm-hmm. Tell me what that means.
So it's taking that time and it's having purpose, living purposefully, intentionally with your family, whether that be through being present and spending your time with your family, or even trips together, your dinners together, whether you're close or far. It's those phone calls. We have somebody in our office that has a family across the country. And so every Sunday they're speaking on the phone. That's investing time and energy into your family.
It's a great point. We have a saying, investing in memories. So spending time with your family, making that a priority, is a way to invest in memories that you will all have forever. And, that little slideshow plays in your mind of those great times you spent together. And that's a richness that you can't just go out and buy. You have to make the time to make that happen and be together and make it a priority. So if I think about the financial industry, because that's the world where we come from, it really does a fantastic job of focusing on wealth as money. It creates products to grow your wealth. We have estate planning attorneys to transfer your money, and philanthropy as a way to give your money away. But this often leaves many people still feeling like what's really important hasn't been addressed. So what's missing in all of that?
It's the memories, it's the stories, it's the values, it's the connectiveness of it is your why. That all adds up to your why. Why are you trying to make this money?
Great point. So why are you trying to transfer this wealth down? I often say that the estate planning is the technical aspect of moving money. But again, that's not people's really main priority. It's just that they know they're supposed to do that. But what they often want to transfer are the stories, the legacy, what made this money. Well, let me tell you about my grandfather and what he had to do as a kid, during the Depression, and how they made money, how they had to feed themselves. Wealth was not about accumulating assets. It was surviving day to day. And then that led to my dad doing this when he was young. And these are the stories that then create who you are today. And there's a history that we all carry, whether we know it or not. And it's that family history, those stories of those people who came before us and how their additions left in us, how we carry those forward. What will we take to our kids? Financial planning software doesn't touch that. Estate documents don't touch that. Growing money doesn't touch those stories. So how do you address that with families?
So we sit down and we dig down into those stories. We ask the questions. We try to help them get out what is their reason, what is their why. We all have just a surface level, but really digging down. So asking the next question and being able to really get them to think about, you know what, this is really important to me, and I'm here today to make somebody proud, to provide for my kids, whatever that is, to provide for the next generation. Sometimes it's to provide for my community. Things that are important to each and every family that we work with, we design it. Think of it like this, Liz. It's like a tree. And if you're just focused on the wealth, it's like those trees that just die immediately. They grow fast and there's no roots. We're trying to create the roots, trying to develop for each generation going forward their connection to the wealth.
It's a great picture of, you think, the root system underground and the trees connecting and building strong branches, strong trunks, and then you can build from that. If I think about our industry, taking that a little bit further, if I'm a consumer in this world of finance, I can get help from a broker, an advisor, or a money manager. But why do you think we have so few conversations with those service providers about my value and my purpose? Don't you think that should align with your money choices and what you're trying to do? And yet it's so rarely talked about.
So it's scary, right? If I ask you a question you don't want to answer, or you answer and it's scary for me because I'm a mathematical guy or gal,
an analyst, and you don't deal with emotions,
and emotions just don't come out. It's scary, and so I will sometimes avoid that question if I'm that type of personality. But at the end of the day, moving wealth forward, helping people live their most rich life, that is what we want to do. We want to help design that for our families, where they really have that deep root system where they're getting to grow their trees.
So you're talking about wealth as you're talking about money?
No, I'm talking about feeling blessed and having purpose. And yes, money is part of that component, but it is a word way down the line.
So how do you help somebody define or find their purpose?
We really work on what is it that is driving you day to day? We really work on what makes you feel as if you're adding value. What gives you joy in the moment? What gives you a need to move forward? It's like finding your career versus your job.
Right.
It's not working when you find your career because you found your passion and your purpose, and it's really getting to that passion.
What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
How do you enjoy spending your time? What are the things that excite you?
Right. And if we can focus on helping them find that, then their life becomes balanced a little bit more.
Great segue. Let's talk about balance. I tell people all the time that balance is not a straight line. It is a line that moves up and down constantly. And what you're trying to do is strive for low volatility in that up and down movement. The smaller the up and down movement, the more balanced your life is. But for example, if I take my family on a week vacation, then I am high in my family life. I'm spending time with them. I'm investing in memories, creating those memories. We're together. We're having a great time. We're spending quality time together. But then when I come back to the office, I'm going to pay for that vacation. I'm going to have to work longer nights. I'm going to have to put in extra time at the office, which means my family life is going to suffer. But on average, when you combine those, I've got work-life balance. It just means I can spend time where I need to. If I'm thinking about wealth, how do you think balance plays into living a wealthy life?
I think when you are balanced, it takes the chaos, the anxiety, the keep you up at night factor away. And so having that balance allows you not to be in the moment of stress at all times. Just how am I going to handle this one situation that's putting me out of balance? I think we all strive for balance in our lives. And when we are balanced, we are humming along. Yep. And it just makes life feel like it's going by pleasurably, as opposed to, I just can't take any more of it.
I tend to live in those I can't take any more of those weeks on occasion.
I think maybe you do that to yourself.
I do. And I also think that when you're in, we call it the fight or flight, phase of stress, that you don't have the gratitude that helps you find that balance as well.
I think gratitude is a big component of being thankful for where you are, thankful for what you have. It allows you to look at things a lot differently. If you think about things from the gratitude standpoint, it's never the glass half empty. It's the glass half full. So when you approach a problem, you're able to say, okay, this is just a challenge, just a blip, and you're able to master any issue that comes along.
And have creative solutions instead of not seeing any solutions because you're so stressed out.
Absolutely. I think one time I've worked with somebody that they always would say, oh, I'm just so stressed. I'm so stressed. And I think we've all met those people, and more things happen to those people because they cannot make a good choice at that point. They're just living in that stress-filled life.
So how do you help people who tend to live more in that realm? How can you help them find that balance and that gratitude?
So I love a gratitude journal and writing down. And when you start writing down gratitude, what you're grateful for, when you start saying it out loud, you begin to think, I'm grateful for the friendships that I've made. I'm grateful for the work that I get to do, the purpose that I live. I'm grateful for my family. So you just begin to think about, I have a lot of things to be grateful for. My life's not so bad.
And you're forced to slow down to think about those things. So you decompress as you're doing that. I think actually writing is proven to decompress people as well. Interestingly enough, one of the most powerful things to set off balance from people worry about having kids that are spoiled and entitled and don't understand the sacrifices that were made, which I think ties back to our conversation on telling the stories of what got you to the point where you are in life, how your parents, your grandparents played into where you are today. But gratitude offsets entitlement. If children understand the sacrifices that were made, then they're less likely to huff and puff when they don't get something, but actually be grateful for you. Be appreciative for what you do for them. Mm-hmm. And that's a seismic shift in a relationship if you've been on the entitled side. But I think it's something that most of the families that we work with worry about on some level, whether it's in the back of their head or whether it's screaming out front at them. How do I not raise entitled kids? And in today's society where everything is so disposable, just buy another one. You know, you can order it on Amazon, whatever it may be. It's immediately here. How do you think about helping kids to practically understand that there's more to life than Amazon?
It's a hard one, right? Because you have to really engage with the child, but then you have to develop who they are and help them see their purpose in life and what their strengths and characteristics are. And then helping bring that value. My one surprise that I have for every parent that we work with every family is your kids were listening.
Yeah.
They were listening to those values. They were listening to those stories. And we have yet to do a family that they don't, in some form or fashion, the parents say, you know, I didn't realize they heard me. Mm-hmm. And so I think just really reiterating who they are, what their family stands for. You know, our family has a motto. We're from Ireland, and our motto is to rise again. And so you just know that is who you will be going forward, no matter what comes at you. And teaching kids that you're going to have mistakes. And I will tell you, Liz, the one thing I think is telling them about your failures sometimes is huge.
Just think about social media and the pretense that is shown because everything looks perfect. Mm-hmm. People are in these great vacations. I mean, nobody shows the crappy part of life on social media.
They're always smiling, and it's always the best angle and the best hair.
And little comments are, oh, love you so much. And you're like, wait, I thought you didn't like that child at all.
Right.
I mean, it's just this fake facade, but that's the world they're growing up in. So how do you ground them and help them know there's more to life? Showing the mistakes is just an awesome, powerful opportunity to say, hey, life isn't perfect and things don't always work out. And you got to be prepared and resilient and know how to get up again. That's hugely powerful. I even think about in the workforce, we have a fair amount of young kids that come in, and you know, it's very different than when you and I were growing up. We didn't have cell phones. There was nobody watching us. We didn't have to put on a facade. We were all riding bikes together or playing in the woods or whatever it was, however you grew up. And today it's just very, very different. And I think there's a lot of fear of judgment, that you have to have the answer right away, that search it on Google and you'll find it. And life isn't really like that. Talk about a little bit about what you see professionally with new hires, if you will, young professionals.
I think with young professionals, they want to be perfect. Sometimes they're afraid to even make a mistake, so they just sit in their box and they won't venture out. And, you know, everybody is going to make mistakes. So really for us, we try to teach them that, hey, talk to a colleague. We try to mentor them along and coach them along, so that they really do feel like they can blossom in their role. When you have the ability, and this is in family or even work settings, when you have the ability to go ask somebody, well, how'd you handle this? And they are able to tell you how they handled it, and it was a different way of handling it than you're thinking, it's a great environment to grow in. Our founder, Fred Middleton, he's really great at being a mentor. And that's one of the things that we've all been blessed with, is we've been able to talk to him and figure out how he did things back in the day. You know, that was way, way back in the day, but still, there are things that you can glean from his experience.
I hate to tell you, but kids think we are from way, way back in the day.
I know.
We didn't have computers. I remember the first typewriter be putting on everybody's desk. carbon paper. I remember the first email, the birth of the internet. I mean, yeah, we look really old. So
Right. That's the funnest thing in our office is an old typewriter. It's there for nostalgia purposes.
Oh, I want to go back to parenting a little bit. You and I are similar in ages, but you have one child. I have four. I think you do such a good job of being intentional and having conversations and framing situations for your son to learn from. Whereas I feel like there's chaos always going on. I'm exhausted when I get home. I'm lucky to put them all in bed when they were little. And I just look back and I think about all the opportunities that I have missed over the years to really teach them. And, you know, it's something that you have to make peace with over time. I didn't do it the way I would have wanted to because life was reality and I did it the way I had to. It's a lot of conversations I have in my head. But you also said something about they learn from example, they're watching, they're listening, they pick up a lot more than you think they do. And now that my kids are in their young 20s, late teens, for the most part, we have some really interesting conversations. And sometimes I'm like, phew, they did hear that, they did catch that, it's okay. But I think you have such a strength in pausing and really addressing the situation. I mean, talk a little bit about how you have made that a purpose and a way for your son to learn.
So we were not blessed to have children early on in life. And so when we had them late in life, I knew what a blessing it was. And I will say this, first of all, I've met your kids and they're all amazing kids. So
thank you.
They were listening.
We're always our own worst critic, but you know, you lay in bed and the things that go through your head.
Right. But I think just taking a moment and being able to teach from what I know and letting him see, it gives him an advantage when he grows up that he has some situational, I like to call it situational experience. That's my own made up word. But he has that situational awareness and experience. And I feel like for him, that's incredibly important.
Do you think, well, let me ask you this. How do you think we help our kids think about wealth? And when I say that, I do not mean money.
Right.
I mean, how do we help them realize where they are wealthy?
Right.
And we're not going to use that word with them, but the concept is there.
I like to think about it as blessings because that's where they can understand. And so I really like to help them see their strengths, let them identify as their own individual, help them grow, but also how they fit in the family. You have 4 children. They're all 4 unique individuals.
Yes, they are.
And they all have their place in the family. And they have cousins and other relationships within the family. Helping them identify that, hey, you may not be, maybe one of them's not a sports person and their cousin is. One may not be a brainiac and they are. Just trying to help them see that they are blessed in that area and not compare to each other. And then also that they have this great big family and this whole circle of love around them. And that they fit in and they're wanted and needed. I think that's incredibly important in this world that we live in right now, where people feel out of balance, out of kilter, where they don't feel like they have a purpose or they don't feel like they are wanted and needed.
So that reminds me of something. You and I were both growing up in the 80s. It was the real dual income lifestyle, both parents working, kids going home to empty houses. There was somewhat a level of destruction of family values during that time. And if I look at that at one end of the pendulum, I think we have swung to the far end. And, we see kids come in now that are not motivated by money. Not that they're not motivated by it, but it's not a top motivation for them. And instead, they're motivated by a work-life balance, having experiences. I mean, they'll save money and vacation to take these experience trips. I mean, they're not just vacations, but it's rock climbing, it's island hopping, it's whatever it is, but it seems deeper than what we experienced with peers that went on vacations. They might go to Cancun and spend a week on the beach and drink beer and have fun. But these kids seem like they're, not all of them, but there's a fair amount that are after real true experiences. And it's filling that bucket in a different way.
Right.
With what I would say seems to have more purpose and thought to it than ever happened in our lifetimes.
Well, I think the pendulum has swung that way, and hopefully maybe it will swing back to the middle just a little bit, where, you don't need to have money to live wealthy, but you can also create chaos if you don't have some to fall back on.
Being thoughtful, having a plan. I mean, those are not you can't substitute that. Otherwise, you're right. You live in chaos and fear, and that's when you are fight or flight again, and not having balance and not having gratitude. I mean, it's a cycle. So you do have to find your happy medium. And I think what I have seen in some of the young professionals that really want those experiences, they really plan for them. Mm-hmm. They know what they want to do. They figure out how much they need to save to get there, how much vacation time they need. And it's not just on a whim. It's a year or two in advance that they're planning these trips. And to me, that's just such a more thoughtful approach than, like I said, we used to do.
I think it is. And the outcome's a lot better as well.
I agree. No, it's fulfilling when they take those trips. There's a sense of accomplishment.
Right. They've achieved a goal.
Exactly. Yeah. No. And then it does give them that boost they need to continue on work and not feel stressed out, burnout, whatnot. And it's not like that's the only vacation they take, but that's just the one that refuels them. Mm-hmm. So kind of continuing on that path, since we're right here, is wealth money? And I think in our society today, the answer looks like yes, but it's really not. So if wealth is money, then why doesn't it feel so fulfilling when you have the big house, the fancy car, the designer shoes, the latest whatever? You still see people trying to keep up with the Joneses, looking at who else has what. Oh, well, maybe I need more. You can't ever fill that void if you're measuring that way. And yet, as a society, we seem to repeat that pattern again and again, thinking that we're going to be fulfilled there. But as I tell my kids, there's always somebody richer than you, always somebody prettier than you, always somebody smarter than you. But you know what? You're prettier than some people. You're smarter than some people. You have more than some people. I mean, it's a spectrum, and don't try and be on top all the time, because you don't get there and you fall from there and you're judged from there. And I mean, there's a lot of negatives that go along with that as well. So, as a society, it feels like we need to change what we call valuable.
I 100% believe that. I think our kids deserve to change what we call valuable. It is living in, the frame, as in a picture frame.
Right
now.
As on social media.
Right.
Yeah.
And I really feel like when you find people who are really love themselves and love the people that are around them, they are the ones you want to be around, not the ones that are trying to get the next
Those people
thing.
Fill you up because
That's
they're
right.
comfortable with where they are. They're genuine in who they are. That's a great point.
100%.
They feel their value in who they are. Mm-hmm. They're not trying to be something or someone else.
Right.
That's a great point. So we talked a little bit about kids and wealth. How do we help kids think about money? And as a society, do you think we prepare them enough? And let me just answer my own question maybe. I think, and I did a TED Talk on this years ago, we start to train kids on sex ed in elementary school, but tell me when your child has taken a financial literacy class. Never. And so this is a tool that I hope they will use every day, deciding what to do with money, whether it's, do I buy this cup of coffee or this soda? Do I buy this candy? Do I buy this new Xbox controller? I mean, they're making those decisions all day long, every day. I hope they aren't making sex ed decisions every day,
Right.
So it drives me crazy that we don't teach that more. And to that effect, we launched a boot camp this summer to really teach those late high school kids, early college kids, about how to think about financial decisions and things that make sense. But as a society, as we're talking to our children, how do we prepare them for not following the money, but still being productive, finding jobs that work for them? We laugh about criminal justice as a degree. Well, what are you going to do? You want to be the police force? Do you want to go to law school? Do you want to be in the FBI? Did you think about what your degree was? And just for the show, that's my daughter's degree.
Well, I don't think we do a justice to our kids. I think we send them off and we expect them to be perfect in many decisions, and we didn't give them the tools.
And you said a great word there again, perfect.
They're going to fail.
They should fail. I mean, look, we fail. As adults, we fail. And I think as adults, we are afraid to talk to our kids about money and decision making because sometimes we fear that we're not making the right one. So how do you teach it if you don't feel like you're always living it?
Right. It is uncomfortable to have conversations. We have conversations with our 13-year-old, and it's they ask questions and you're like, oh, I didn't think about that, or I'm not really ready to tell you that. Right. But really, if you're preparing them, you have to get a little uncomfortable. It's okay.
Be vulnerable.
Be vulnerable, and it will get better as you grow together. And it's just like having a first child, right?
Right.
You made some mistakes on your first child that you didn't make on the second one. You learned on them. You both were learning together. And so as an oldest child, I can tell you that happens. And so I really think that preparing them, but also you ask about how do you help them not just follow the dollars? And really, when you talk about kids and are they purpose-filled? Is this what they enjoy doing? They're going to have to do some jobs to figure out what that is. We all kind of probably were
had some failure first jobs, you mean?
A little bit of bouncing around in the beginning, but that's life.
Right.
You have to find your way, but it's getting them back to their purpose. What are their values? I have a great story about your dad. He worked for a gentleman. He was making great money, had 4 babies, and he told me that somebody asked him to do something that he didn't feel was ethical, and he quit his job and called his wife, your mom, and said, I just quit my job. And he was like mortified, but his character was more important. And if you knew Liz's dad, you knew character was all, he was just a man of character. And so that's teaching kids it's okay to stand up for what is right.
Yeah. I look back on the things that my parents did, and I can see lessons that we learned along the way, and then I reflect on mine, and I'm like, have we shown them those things? But, even again, when we were going through those as kids, it's not like my parents stopped and said, hey, look, this is what's happening.
Right.
We just absorbed it from the situation. So hopefully that is happening with my children. But I think not shying away from those conversations is important. And like you said, maybe it's not 100% transparency with numbers, but it's the character of the conversation. It's going down that path of, hey, look, everything is not always great, and you have to be able to make adjustments. Or maybe the conversation is, you chose that job and it pays well, but you're burnout. You don't like the people you work with. That voice inside your head, your heart, wherever, is telling you that maybe this isn't for you, and being able to be comfortable with coaching them to listen to yourself, and because you did raise those kids and they do have values, and those are the thing that is important, that is going to drive them. I do think when you can align your values with your decision making, that's where you find fulfillment. That's where you find purpose. You've got alignment there. Yes. And I think you're famous for saying the money will come if you can fill those first two things. And maybe it's that the money doesn't have to be as much because you're happy doing what you're doing. Or maybe it's because you are happy doing what you're doing, you're good at it, and you're better in your job because of that, and you make more money because you progress along in your career faster. Lots of different ways to go, but the alignment of values and decision making, I think, is truly important for a purpose-filled life and feeling fulfilled in life.
I think so too. If you think about it, Liz, if somebody walked in and gave you all the money in the world, but every other aspect of your life you hated who you had to be to get that money, you hated everything, would you really take that option?
Nope, the money's not worth it.
And I think if we ask ourselves those questions.
That's a great point. Live in that situation mentally before you go there.
Yes. What outcome do you want from it?
Right. You're giving me something to think about. Any other words of wisdom on kids, siblings, family?
So I would say from a parental standpoint, I don't have multiples, but I work with a lot of clients that do. And your kids all have a calculator in their head. And they're all thinking about how you gave Liz something and you didn't give Charlotte something. And, that's that having transparent conversations about why you're doing something for one and not the other, especially when they're adults, is a really good habit to get into.
Why is that important?
So I really feel like when you have those conversations, let's just, I said you gave Liz something you don't have, but let's say you had a special needs child and you needed to stay home. And your sister was a doctor and she didn't need to stay home, didn't have any children. Your parents were supporting you to do that. Having that conversation and not doing it behind the scenes with Charlotte, your sister, it allows her to say, oh, of course you're going to do that. It allows there not to be that baggage.
The animosity,
the
resentment, the jealousy that can pop up in all of these things.
I love to say we can bring our animosity, our baggage, if you will, to every family function if we don't get these conversations out in front of everybody.
It's a very fair point. I think a lot of families live in those unhealthy family dynamics, and they're living wealth as a monetary instrument instead of wealth as something that fuels your life, that is more broad, like health, like family, like love, like faith, like those things that fulfill you as a person. If we're focused on the monetary aspect of wealth, life can get really messy and really divisive, and that's just not a pleasant way to live.
No, it isn't, and it's chaos.
Yeah.
And it's stressful. Instead of a family where it's your peace and you can go back to and they always have your back and they're supporting you and there's connection, there's not. It's broken and it's chaotic. And
then people
stressful.
dread coming together and being a part of that. Yeah, so it's really unhealthy in so many ways. Takeaways. Can you give me a couple takeaways for audience if they want to really think about living life richly and having wealth that is more than money? What do you recommend?
I would say that spending time with your kids, figuring out what your purpose is, what fills your bucket, and then evaluating what are your values.
Are you living your values?
Are you living them?
Are they present?
Yes. And then are you making decisions on it? And when you start making decisions based on your values, it becomes a no-brainer.
I would say, do you talk about your values? And listen, I'm the first one to throw out the question and not necessarily do it, because it's hard to be sitting around the dinner table talking about sports and then say, hey, let's talk about our values. But finding ways to incorporate those into a conversation somehow is so powerful. And even if it's through telling a story. I was thinking about this the other day. My mother and her cousin are very close. They grew up together in El Paso, and the family is getting older, and they went back and pulled all of these great photos, letters that were written between my great-grandparents. And there's such an incredible history there of what my great-grandparents did in the 1880s that, today would just seem so foreign to my kids. But they put these two beautiful books together of their mothers, their grandmothers, and the history, and delivered them to all my siblings. And I realized, I have them there, and I had them out to look through them, and then they got put away, and I haven't looked through them. And I'm embarrassed to say it's probably been close to a year. But so I'm laying in bed the other night, awake, thoughts going through your head. And one of the thoughts was, oh my gosh, I need to get those books out, and we need to sit down in the living room after dinner, not formal, but just flip through them and say, oh my gosh, my mother had a donkey instead of a bike, growing up. And that's a what story?
Then you can get the book out.
Right. I mean, that's
because your kids don't want to sit down and look at old pictures until you start telling a story, and they're like, I don't believe you.
Right.
Remember, they're the Google generation.
Yes.
So you've got your evidence right here. Here is your grandmother with her donkey.
Yep.
And you would never believe who she is today was who she was then. That's so much fun to do. Those game nights, that's a really good time to bring in conversation.
A story. We've talked before about just how human beings are wired to tell and to hear and to learn from stories.
It has a 75% retention rate versus
phenomenal.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and we created little conversation cards that, there's like 20 in a pack, but it is implicitly trying to get people to think about their values without saying, hey, what's your value? I mean, what are the things you value most? And those are great conversations around the dinner table that you can have that aren't awkward, but, teenagers and above, I think, is the right audience for that for the most part.
I think it is. I think you can meet each one with its own little bit of nuggets. You build upon it as they're younger. I think we were telling our child when he'd fall and get hurt, you're Maxwell, get up. You can
love it.
We're strong. We get up. We rise again.
They say that those little things that you tell them that you repeat to them over the years are who they become. So find the things that are important to you and repeat them.
Very much so.
Well, there are so many great conversations that come from discovering the true wealth in your life. And I feel that when you see wealth for more than money, you will have true clarity in what matters to you. And that clarity will help you in every decision you make. Thank you for spending time with us. I look forward to the next time you'll join us. And remember, wealth is a lot more than money. Thank you.